Alright, so this question got sent to me when I was doing my A-levels last year. It's a differential equations question, and the exam board I think is OCR, but it doesn't really matter because these questions are kind of all the same for every exam board. So just try it, have a go. It is hard, I would say, it's an A-star level question, but if you get it wrong, it's mine. I don't worry about it. Just make sure you kind of learn from your mistake, and if you got it right, then amazing. You're kind of on track for that A-star. So pause it, have a go, and I'll go through the work solution. Alright, so in terms of this question, there's a couple of things we need to notice. So obviously, first of all, is a diagram. So we have the angle, and then we have two lengths. We have 50 and h. Then we have this. So dv over dt equals minus 2h. Now notice that this isn't t, this because obviously it's dv over dt. In order to kind of use that as a differential equation directly and separate the variables, the h needs to be a t, but obviously it's not here. So we need to kind of manipulate that in order to kind of make it work and make a differential equation that we can solve and separate the variables. So in terms of the question itself as well, it says determine the time taken for the tank to become empty. Now, if we do work with this dv over dt, you'll notice that we can't replace this h with t. It just won't work because simply we just don't have enough information in the question. So that is kind of out of the picture. But there is another way, and that is to use dh over dt as well. Because if you think about it, if h is 0, so h being the height of the water, then if it becomes 0, then of course the tank is empty, which is answering the question. So we can also use that, and the way we find dh over dt out is through connected rates of change. So this is how you do it. So dh over dt equals dv over dt times dh over dv. Now if you should be able to notice as well that these two dv's, they cancel out. So that's perfect. That would just equal dh over dt. So that's the first thing you need to recognize. That's quite hard, kind of recognizing that you need to use dh over dt. So if you got that, then you're on the right lines and you're on a good track. But then after this, we basically need to find out what r equals in terms of h, and you'll see why in a second. So what I've done is I'll basically label this angle, this side length r, and then of course this is h, yeah, and then that would just be this here, so this diagram, and then we could just use simple trigonometry because this is a right angle. So tan 30, because this is the adjacent, that's the opposite, equals r over h because it's opposite over adjacent. So tan 30 is the same as root 3 over 3, which means if you rearrange for r, you get h root 3 over 3. So that's amazing, we've got that. Now, the reason why we needed to do that is because of this information here, which we got given as well. So volume of a cone is equal to a third pi r squared h. Now, you should notice that we have r squared and we have h. And we don't want that. We just want it in terms of h because we're trying to find dh over dt. So what we do is we sub in this value here into r squared. So v equals a third pi r squared h, which is the same as v equals a third pi, and then sub in that value of r, and then multiply it by h. And then we get v equals a third pi, and then kind of times out that bracket, so you get 3h squared over 9 times by h, which eventually leads to this, which is a 9th pi h cubed. So perfect, we have it in terms of h now. Now we just need to differentiate it. So dv over dh equals 3 over 9 pi h squared. So of course the way I got that, you should be very familiar with this by now, is you take the 3 over to this side, and then you reduce the power on the h by 1. So you get a third pi h squared once you simplify it all down. So that's good as well. But in terms of our equation, we need dh over dv, not dv over dh. And the way you do that is by finding a reciprocal. So you basically do 1 divided by dv over dh. So that would just be 3 over pi h squared. So you essentially just flip this around, yeah, and then you end up with 3 over pi h squared. So now we can just find dh over dt. We've got all the pieces. We just do minus 2h times 3 over pi h squared, and the minus 2h came from this. And you get what do you get? You get this, so minus 6h over pi h squared, which then simplifies to minus 6 over pi h. Okay, so we have that now. Amazing. Now we can just go about it like any other kind of differential equations question. So you separate the variables. So as you notice, we've got pi h on this side. So we need to times that over to get it on the same side as dh. And then we have minus 6, which is just a constant. So we can have anything on that side. So we can have dt on that side as well. So we have to times dt onto the other side to end up with this. And then you just integrate both sides. So of course, to integrate this, you first raise the power by 1, so you get pi h squared, and then you divide by the new power, which is 1 over 2 pi h squared. And then with this, of course, you just add the t, because it's just a constant. And then remember your constant of integration, that this is really, really important, and you don't want to forget that. Then after that, it's just subbing in values, and then you're done. So half pi and then 50 squared equals minus 6, 0 plus c. The 50 comes from the initial height, which is also stated in the question. So 50 here, and then it's also somewhere in the text as well. I can't be bothered to underline it. And then that's when t is 0, of course, because that's the initial kind of depth of the thing. So you sub those two values in, you end up with c, which is 1250 pi. So then you rewrite your equation, which is a half pi h squared equals minus 6t plus 1250 pi, which is c. And then all you need to do is just solve for t when h is 0. So remember what I told you before, in terms of h being 0, that's the case because when h is 0, that means the tank is empty, which is what the question is asking us to kind of figure out. So we sub that in and we end up with this. And then we can just rearrange for t and you end up with that. So it was quite a difficult question, but if you can clock kind of those few things, so for example, using dh over dt and then also using this triangle as well. Other than that, to be honest, it's like any standard differential equations question. So don't be too kind of bogged down if you got it wrong, but just make sure you know what to do to kind of fix that issue that you had. So let me know if you want more of these, and make sure you kind of like the video, follow me, comment as well. If you have any questions, just let me know. And yeah.